Thank you very much for coming to Pydata Copenhagen. It's great to see so many old faces and also so many new faces. As is tradition, how many have been here before? And the new people. Excellent. So we like to have the 50-50 ratio, and it seems like we almost succeeded today as well. So that's excellent. So for those of you who don't know, Pydata is part of NumFocus. NumFocus is a nonprofit organization that is a fiscal sponsor of many of your favorite open source Python tooling. That includes Pandas and scikit-learn and NumPy, even projects like Julia and some R stuff. And they have a conference arm and a meetup arm called Pydata, and that is where you are today. So to be a Pydata organization, we have to follow a code of conduct. So the short code of conduct is that we are kind to others, we do not insult or put down others, and we're professionals. So remember that we are in a professional environment, we don't tolerate any harassment, sexual innuendo, or sexual harassments, or any other conduct unbecoming. So if you do feel you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, please do come find myself, and we will sort out the situation to the best of our abilities. Again, we have never had to use this, so please don't make today the first day. Some practicals, for those you haven't seen already, the bathroom is round to the right, but we do have one rule at Pydata Copenhagen, and that is the Pac-Man rule. So we put a lot of emphasis on, again, meeting people who share similar interests, and it can be a bit hard to join a conversation when some people do know each other. They stand in a big group and you chat. So make sure that there's room for someone to join your conversation, and when someone does join the conversation, take another step back to leave another gap, and then someone else can join your conversation. That way we can try to meet some new people today. Another sub-rule is that we do try to keep it in English, again, for accessibility purposes. And I know it is hard, but let's try. So today we are hosted by Ambrand Group. Our presenter today is from Ambrand, so he's going to have a bit more to say about that later. So I'm going to skip the familia. But as again, we always say thank you very much to our sponsors. But we can give them a big clap in a little bit. Or now. We can do it twice, that's fine too. We always have a community announcement section, and this is if you have anything that you want to promote, some other meetup, maybe a job opening, you can say 2 words about that if you have a burning desire to do so. Anyone? Yeah, we have one.
Yeah, so, hey, working with Novo Nordisk, a pharmaceutical company that's Danish-based, Danish-founded, and based on Danish values, which to me is a good thing. Personally, I'm looking very much for a product owner for our core clinical infrastructure, which means how we build up a good dataverse on AWS, including controls and data lineage and interesting clinical data, operations data, so forth. So that's sort of what I'm looking for. As an organization, we're looking for people that are good at AI, ML, engineering. Our biggest problem is that we are growing. So you will be part of a growing organization where opportunity is name of the game, where lost opportunity is something that we sort of try to avoid. Because that's the capital we operate in. We are totally overrated on the market cap, but doing fairly okay. So if any of you are interested in LinkedIn profile, I'll just link the job position on product owner, reach out to me. Otherwise, keep a keen eye on our careers page. There's a wealth of opportunity, and we are looking for skilled people that want to grow. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Henrik. Henrik is also in charge of video today, so that's kind of, you get to join in on Pydata stuff. Anyone else? You look, no? Okay. No? I'm not going to call anyone out.
Just out of curiosity, you said Pydata before, do you have any idea of how many countries you have meetups like this going?
We actually just looked at it with one of your colleagues. We have 225 meetups across the world, and conferences, I would say about 50, 60 different countries, all spanning from the US to Europe to Africa to Asia. So it is a worldwide organization.
Thank you.
So go check out pydata.org if Quick announcement in that vein, there is Pydata London coming up. Pydata London is the original Pydata conference and is a great place to go. Berlin, I believe, is also very soon. Some people are going to Seattle, I just heard, Pydata Seattle.
End of April.
Yeah. So if you do want to have the opportunity, it's a great place. All these are volunteer run, so there's no vendors who are selling you stuff. It is all volunteers who are running these. All the profits go to NumFocus to help support the various open source projects. So yeah, I will plug that.
And Anders, I think there's also online participation possible if you are bound by CO2 restrictions.
For Pydata Global, which also runs every year, I don't think I've announced it yet for this year, but there is also Pydata Global, which is the online global conference. I will also say that I will be taking some pictures. If you don't want to be in those pictures, again, do come find me. I'll make sure that you get erased before I put anything online.
And I'll focus on the presenters.
We need you. So today we were fortunate enough to have Andreas come and talk to us. We can only do this because you guys spend the time to come up with a talk, share something that you are passionate about. And we always need speakers. So if you have something you're passionate about, please do come find me. I'm happy to help you workshop your ideas and shape it into something cool. It's also great practice if you want to maybe go to a Pydata conference and give a presentation there. You get to do something in a nice, friendly environment where you don't have too many hecklers. So yeah, do come find me. We have a LinkedIn you can reach us on, Pydata Copenhagen, or you can reach out to me across meetup.com. But that's enough preamble to the main course of today. Thank you very much to Andreas. So let's give him a big hand.
So how do we change the input on this?
And we really hope that, that actually went surprisingly well.
Perfect, okay, yeah, that was smooth.
That never happens.
No, exactly. I promised I would do like really quick formalities as well before the presentation talk starts. So what is Alm Brand Group? It's an insurance company. It's fairly old, founded in 1792.
We have a nice museum outside.
Yeah, exactly. They like Pydata here. And it's the second biggest insurance company in Denmark. I don't know if I already mentioned that. We're also bound by traditional values. Bound by, that sounds a bit negative, but we value traditional values, and we're also growing. So last year we bought another insurance company and we actually grew 100% in size. It's pretty impressive when you think about it, because we are already pretty big. So yeah, I think that's just the formalities I want to go over. Isn't that enough, Emil? Yeah, I'm getting a nod from front row here.
I will say Alm Brand has been sponsoring Pydata since almost the very beginning. So we're very, very thankful for them for all their supports.
Yeah, so the presentation, as you will see, I have not had a lot of time to practice this presentation, but I think it doesn't matter. I think it will be fine, because we'll just have like a small dialogue and discussion, and I'll talk about what we made and why and so on. The question is build or buy. What do you want to do? Do you want to build? Do you want to buy? We decided to build. I can already say that. And then I'll talk about some of the pros and cons of doing that. So who am I? My name is Andreas Johansen. I'm Danish. 32 years, studied in the University of Copenhagen, had some courses at DTU, had some courses in the US, and then I did a master's in the Netherlands and Sweden on data science. I worked at IBM before I joined Alm Brand, and I got a little bit tired of being a consultant and doing solutions that you go to a client, you make a solution, and then they say, okay, but now you're off the project, so what you put your heart into is dead now. So I joined Alm Brand Group in hopes that we would build something that would last for longer. What do I like? I like Python, computers, traveling. I have a lot of friends all over the world, and I like brewing beer. And then, I don't know, any hobby that sustains my interest for more than a month. I'm pretty much changing my hobbies all the time. So I didn't want to put in anything else, but I do a bunch of stuff.
You need to mention your bike.
During COVID, I built an ice cream bike. That was my 1 month hobby during COVID for selling ice cream. And I got all the legal stuff was in order. I never sold any ice cream. So I would rather present myself by some of the major keys that went into this talk and how I aspire to work. And then if you read the introduction to this talk, you already know that keeping it simple, stupid is one of my main principles in life. And also from Google, if you read their best practices for machine learning, I learned that you shouldn't be afraid to launch a product without machine learning. It's like a bit paradoxical when you want to do machine learning, but I think it makes sense. I believe open software is better than closed proprietary software.
How
some
dare you
people
say
agree
that
with
at
that.
Pydata?
What, sorry?
How dare you say that at Pydata?
Exactly. It's just a matter of time before we close this. I think Martin Fowler said, when do you use iterative development? Whenever you want your projects to succeed. I think that's pretty wise words as well. And then I also believe in this 80-20 rule, that you put in 80% of your effort to gain the last 20% of profit from whatever project you're building. Yeah. So I'm gonna mention some of these keys later during the talk. There's gonna be like small Easter eggs here and there. You'll find them, I think. Oh yeah, and involve users. That was the last one. Also pretty neat. So what is this talk? It's about a successful project that we made at Alm Brand, built in an iterative, agile fashion, which kind of failed. And we'll talk about why. I think it was both successful and failed. And maybe you can gain some inspiration about maybe you want to do something similar. Maybe you want to ask for the source code. You can also do that. Or maybe you want to never do this and, just to stay away from what I did. So yeah, the problem statement. I like The Simpsons as well. That wasn't on the first slide. When I joined Alm Brand, I was immediately thrown into this RPA automation team. If you aren't familiar with the concept, it's automation through graphical user interfaces. And it sounds extremely boring, and it's not the most sexy thing ever. I'm not offending anybody, but to me it was not the most sexy term ever. But it makes sense in an insurance company that's 200 years old because you have legacy software and there's no API, so you have to use the interface. The goals of this team was to spend less time doing manual processes in these legacy systems, and also to lower input errors, for example, in some of the legacy systems. Because we have a lot of people who manually input information, and if we have that information from a different system, why don't we just insert it programmatically? So we have these legacy systems. They're not that fun. These were the challenges that we were facing. Slow response times. Basically, whenever these users, they would input information into legacy systems, sometimes it could take 10, 15, 20 seconds, maybe more, for the next page to load. So this just makes processes take extremely long. And I don't know how they do it, but these people have a lot of patience. And then there are like paper documents in the building still, and PDFs that we have we don't extract information from, because we don't receive the information in a structured JSON format. We just receive a PDF, and then we're supposed to work with it. This could be, as I will talk about in a second, invoices, for example. It's an excellent example. So here are a few pictures of what a legacy system might look like. This is the insurance application, it's called, TIA. This keeps the company running. It has all information about all insurance-related things, and the API is horrible. And it takes a long time to load different pages. And then I couldn't find a picture of this software, which was not tilted, so I'm sorry about that. But this is a piece of software that's called Cacao, which also has a rusty SOAP API that nobody knows how to use, and it's not being maintained. So you use the UI to automate stuff. And yeah, this is what it looks like when people are working with these systems. So yeah, the problem statement was we decided to, I joined the team hoping that we could take some of the challenges that this team has been facing and take them to the next level using AI, machine learning, and Python. And I said, sure, give me a challenge. And they said, okay, well, we have this invoice payment system. So an employee has to pay an invoice. They find the invoice in the legacy claims system. They enter the data manually from this system into another legacy system. And they update back in the original claims system. It sounds pretty easy, but it takes like 6 to 8 minutes per invoice. And we receive a lot of invoices every year, hundreds of thousands. So I was told we receive hundreds of thousands of invoices. You can expect a lot of variance in these documents. We tried using the RPA tool UiPath there, OCR, key value extraction engine, but that didn't work. So what do you have? But we instead of starting like trying to solve like all the invoice problems in the company, we said, okay, let's start simple and just do like invoices from doctors. This little simple use case. There's not a lot of variance in the documents, basically none. But we should be able to prove if this works. So for a POC, we decided to scope smaller. And I had a chat with my product owner, and he said something like, can we use ML to extract information from documents? And I said, it's not that simple. And he said, why not? And I said, we don't know what we're looking for. It can be like, what information do you want to extract? I don't know. We can extract everything, but then what do we do with that information? And he said, why don't we know that? And I said, because the data is not annotated. And he said, why not? Nobody wants to do it. It's very boring, and especially I'm not going to do it. That's for sure. And he said, okay, so what do we do? And he was crying a little bit because he seemed like I was just a waste of time to invite into the team. And I thought a little bit about what to say to the man. And I decided, like, maybe if annotation wasn't so boring and tedious, and maybe if I didn't have to do it, maybe it would be fun for people to do it, and we could save time that way. So my suggestion was just to out-UX the legacy systems by building an annotation system and gathering data that way. And when I say it now, it sounds a lot more ambitious than it did back then. But hey, shoot for the stars, I guess. So we decided, okay, this sounds pretty cool. What do you suggest? And I said, okay. I suggest that we use these RPA tools to extract the invoice, and we send the invoice via an API that I'm going to build, because this tool is going to have an API, like a RESTful API. So we sent the document into the tool. It's going to run a bunch of OCR and maybe some algorithms, maybe some models on the output. And then the model and OCR will be run once the user has annotated the data. Just from annotating the data, we get a structured document out. Like, we get a nice structure saying, in this part of the document, here's the price, here's the address, here's the whatnot. So we get a structured document, and we can just send that through the rest of the process. And this is the key. Don't be afraid to launch a product without ML. My hypothesis was that annotating the documents and doing it this way would be faster than doing the process manually. And this is what we wanted to test. And the pitch was as follows. We have 3 steps. Users annotate the data themselves, and we write some simple heuristics to extract information, if possible, from the OCR result. We present the results to the users, who then accept the annotations or change them. So we always get feedback on whether or not our heuristics or models were correct. And this is basically the 20% effort that I was going to put in, was build this annotation tool, and 80% of the output, I believed, would be just from users annotating documents instead of doing the whole process themselves. And then step 3, which is like the shooting for the stars part, would be that we start, when we have a lot of data built up, we would start training models to extract information in the future. Could be deep learning models. There's a lot of sexy stuff happening out there. And then once the users, they trust the tool, then we can actually start automating the process completely with these models or heuristics, but only when the users, they feel comfortable that this tool is not making any errors anymore. And that would be the last 80% effort, because MLOps. Yeah, so that's the 80-20 principle, not the key. So then we had to talk about, okay, so what are we actually going to build? Like, what is going to guide this construction of this software? Like, how do we measure different solutions against each other? Requirement number 1, developers don't annotate data, because I'm lazy. Requirement number 2, we get some sort of feedback loop so that we can measure the performance of our rules and models. This is what I just talked about, that we always measure, like, they can change the results, basically. Because of the high variance in documents and data and the different departments that I foresaw using this tool, the UI should be variable, and it should support any kind of data, not just documents necessarily. Could be pictures as well. Could be any kind of data that you want to annotate. Text, sound, I don't know. Integrate with RPA solutions, user-friendly and trustworthy, minimal vendor login, and yeah, support heuristics and pre-annotation and data validation. I'm going to talk a little bit more into this if some of these terms are a little far-fetched. And then, yeah, of course, governance is pretty important to me. We should be able to know which user accessed the system using our Active Directory, and we should be able to know what code is running in production at any given time, and who changed it, and when, and why. Those were the requirements. And I'm in this table, I basically took some of the requirements, put some of them together. As you can see, the columns. It would be too much information if all of them were there. So we looked at one proprietary software house, Pydata.ai. It seemed to me that, and this is a very subjective opinion, so please, if we have any representatives from the companies I'm going to mention, don't judge me. This is what I knew at the time. It seemed to me that their interface was not built for general users to use. It was built for developers to bulk annotate data and then train a model and then release it and forget about it. It's proprietary. It doesn't have variable interface. It only supports documents, but it does support these like pre-annotations. So basically, you upload a document, you try to annotate it using your models, and then you return the annotated results to this like annotation interface. And yeah, you can do data validation. So once you annotate a piece of information, you can validate, is this field, does it live up to certain requirements? So does it look like a bank account number or not? And I don't know about governance. I don't know about Active Directory or version control systems. I didn't see any mention of coding your own solution. They had no code solutions. That's not very version controlled, in my opinion. It's rarely a good thing. Then there's Azure Form Recognizer. Devs don't annotate. It's kind of, when you look at the interface, I'm going to show it in a bit. It looks a bit complex for our users, I think. Proprietary, yes. Variable interface, no. Documents, pre-annotation validation, not that I know of. Governance, yeah, AD, VCS, version control, I'm not sure. These are the RPA platforms, Blue Prism and UiPath. Again, I actually heard from people who had first-hand experiences with this. They say it doesn't work, stay away from it. So that was also a pretty good argument. They are proprietary, yada, yada, yada. Kofax, that's probably the worst system I've seen. No offense if anybody is using it. Yeah, I have no words. But I had a meeting with them and I left early. And then there's Labelbox, which is a better suggestion, I think. It seems that you can basically annotate anything in Labelbox, and I think now they support variable interfaces. They also have open source packages that you can edit, but it's still a paid solution as far as I know. You have to pay per document you annotate, or like you have levels of annotation. So if you start annotating a lot of documents, you're going to pay a lot. And then they support some model training as well, but where does your data end up? Who has access control management, version control systems? I think there were a lot of questions that I wasn't happy with. So custom build, it supports everything. If you build it yourself, you can do whatever you want. That was basically my pitch. I said, okay, before we start talking with these people, we can build something in a week. I'll have a prototype in a week, and we can test it out and we can see if it works. Yeah, and that's why the Python, what do you say, like Python community really helped out, because there was a lot of open source packages that helped me reach the goal. Here are some of the pictures from okay, you can't even barely see them. Yeah, anyway, these are the pictures from the proprietary software, like different software solutions for annotating documents. Yeah, the last one is Kofax. That's what I mentioned. Like I looked at that and I said, no, please don't. The other ones are better. Like they have simpler interfaces. We're building for people who don't have a lot of IT competences, so we want to keep things as simple as possible. But I still think that there are a lot of different buttons, and yeah, from a user experience perspective, it's a bit much, I think. Which one is that? I don't remember. Label box, I think, the last one. So yeah, we are going to build our own, and it's going to be awesome, basically. How did we do this? I think open source came to the rescue. I knew about this simple web interface called YBAT. It's a standalone HTML page with JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. So you can basically run it locally on your PC. You don't need any servers to host anything. You just open an HTML page and it works. So I was impressed by the simplicity, and I figured, okay, it's a couple thousand lines of code. I can probably change a few things and tweak it if I have to. And this is what it looks like, the YBAT interface. So it was built for annotating images. You can draw a bounding box on the right-hand side, and you can choose a class for it. You can upload images, of course, and annotate them one by one. It supports keyboard shortcuts for you to be efficient. And then finally, you can export and import bounding boxes as this COCO format. COCO format is like a standardized format for annotating images, basically. I think Microsoft came up with it. At least they made the COCO dataset. So that was part one, was the front end, and then the part two was a back end for loading and analyzing documents. Here, PDF to image and Tesseract OCR was a big help. So the idea was that if you upload a document, you want to extract a bounding box from each word in a document, and then you want to generate this COCO file with all your bounding boxes so that every word becomes an annotation inside what is now an image. And you can upload the image and you can upload the bounding boxes to this front end, and it will render something that looks like this, where every bounding box is basically an annotation that you can then label. And then as you see, what I showed here is just like two sample classes that you would be able to annotate. And once you annotate them, if you delete all the others, this is what it looks like. You have your Faktura-nummer here, and you have your amount here. So that was basically the POC that we went for, and what it consisted of. And this is what it looked like. I actually thought I had some animation in this slide as well. I didn't. This is what it looked like. I went back in my Git history and I looked at, okay, what did we actually build? And from the day that we decided to build this, the commit that I looked at was 1 week later. So it did take 1 week to build the first prototype. And the way that it worked was you could pick a PDF on your machine, and then you would run the PDF to image script with that path for that PDF as input. This would then turn the PDF into an image, which was outputted into the same folder. Then you could run the second script to image, to OCR, to COCO, which would turn this image, take the image and then run OCR on it using Tesseract, and store it as a COCO format, like this structured format that you could then upload back into the front end. So now you could load the image into the front end, and you have all the bounding boxes from all the words, basically the image that I showed before. they would show up in this interface, and then you could just click on a word, for example, the amount, and say, this is the amount. Boop, here's the invoice number. Here's the dot, dot, dot. And then once you had annotated the document, you would save a new Cocoa file. Remember, this is the POC. So you would save a new Cocoa file, which would have the classes that you gave these new bounding boxes. And then basically you could format this Cocoa file into a smaller JSON and ship it off to RPA software that could perform automation with the extracted information from the document. So we tested this flow with some users. We sat in the same room with them one week after we started, and we said, okay, what do you think about this? And I was like running the scripts and then loading into the front end, like, can you work with this? And at first they were like, what's going on? And we showed them like how to annotate and so on. And then I said, okay, click here. Okay, they clicked and a new file showed up. And I said, okay, I'm just gonna run 2 scripts. And now you're done. You finished working on this document. And they said, oh, but I still have to go back to this software and do this. No, you're done. You did everything you have to do with this document, you're done. The users, at the beginning, they didn't understand it, but slowly they're like, oh, okay, so it's going to take me like 20 seconds, 30 seconds to do this now. And I said, yeah, that's my promise. And they said, cool, we want this. There was no, like, they thought even though I'm just going to go back one slide, even though the interface looks like, I don't know. It was functional, and that's what they needed. They were used to worse looking interfaces than this, and they were used to working for a lot longer on their documents. So for them, it was a win-win, basically. Yeah, the solution, the architecture of the solution. So this is basically a couple weeks after we had their go to build this. I said, all right, let's get this into the cloud. So I did some refinement of these. The scripts, and just to make sure everything worked. And then I started building a Flask application that serves these HTML pages as static files. So once you go in, you just present it with the website as it is. I containerized it immediately. This is one key for success, I think, is just get things into Docker. Just don't waste your time on anything else. Get it into Docker and ship it. So it served the static files and also this API. There was an API where you could upload a document, and there was an API for changing metadata of the document, stuff like that. And also an API for submitting your annotations from this software. So we hosted it as just an Azure web app, simple, quick and dirty. And in the back end of the web app, we had a Postgres database and blob storage. Blob storage for storing the PDF files, Postgres for storing metadata. And the cool thing about this is that you can run the whole thing locally using Docker and Docker Compose. So I will probably show that in a bit. But it's just really easy. Like once it was running, we could actually take our laptop and say, okay, what do you think about it now? Like now it's a website. You don't have to upload these documents anymore. Now they're just here. And you can click on a document and you can annotate it, and you could just hit submit and you're done. And they were blown away. And they started like some other departments. They were like, hey, I heard about this. These guys, they have this tool. Like, can we get something similar? Because we're drowning in work. And I said, yeah, we'll put it in the backlog, like any good developer. A rough sequence diagram. I don't know. Yeah, you can read it. I think maybe. The user goes to the URL. They are served the static files. Also, automatically, once you receive the static files, a request is made for a configuration file. So in the backend, I basically defined what I call the use case configuration. The idea was that there are different use cases in the company, and each use case, you will annotate different things. There will be different rules for validating data. Validating data, I guess those are like the main ones. So it's like a question of how do we handle the metadata and this document annotation. So you request the use case config, it's loaded into the front end, it's just a JSON document that tells the front end how to behave. The UI updates automatically to fit this use case. And then the user can just pick a document and start working. So they request a document from a list. The list is retrieved, it's not complete, this diagram. The list is retrieved from the database that houses metadata about documents. Then you click on a document in a list, which I'll show in a moment. And then you're presented with the document that you can annotate. And if it's pre-annotated by heuristics, they will also show up. Yeah, the document is shown, you edit it as a user, and then you post the annotations. And automatically the document is, if it doesn't already exist, which it does in this case, the metadata is updated and the annotations are stored. And previously the document was also stored in the blob storage, but not anymore. And then the next document is just loaded, so they can continue working. Basically, they finished annotating one document, click send for automation, then the next one is loaded automatically. They do the same thing, next one is loaded. So it's for them it was a really cyclical process where they don't have to press a lot of buttons, basically. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna try and show it, because I think that what I just went through is probably like a little bit much with no reference, a bit of a lot. Yeah, so it still looks ugly, but basically you have a list of documents. They have this like work table thing that they can work in. There are some settings that they can make so that it's customized to their need. Settings are stored as cookies. And then they have what they need to work on, what has been deleted. And when development sort of stopped in this project, we were working on being able to review documents that have already been processed before they are finally, work is completed on them. You could also upload manually. This is not done. The name is very long, but that is leftover from the RPA tool. And now I'm just using like a sample invoice from Microsoft. But yeah, you can pan the document and zoom if you need that. And you can annotate data. Let's see if we can annotate something. Like maybe here. Yeah, it extracts the information. So now it's not showing the bounding boxes as I showed before, but all the bounding boxes are basically stored in an invisible layer in the front end, because it received them as a JSON format from the backend. You can annotate like let's say another number, like a CVR number, and then it will say this is no good. Why is it not good? I used to have like a informational like a little tooltip why it wasn't okay, but basically they have a specific format for these CVR numbers that it has to follow. So it has to be called DK followed by 8 numbers, otherwise it's not valid. So if for whatever reason they typed wrong or a model would extract the wrong thing, it would just not go through validation and it wouldn't be able to be processed automatically. Yeah, and yeah, this is the general idea. You can also change annotations if you want. And yeah, that was basically the software. And then they could, once they've finished adding annotations, they can just press send to payment. And it will prompt them in a very beautiful screen here, like, are you sure you want to send all of this information? Yeah. And then now there's no more in the queue, but it's basically finished. Then they can go home. But if the queue was longer, there would be a long list of documents for them to go through and look at. And I talked a little bit about pre-annotation of documents. So what we did was, in these use case configs, we would write which types of information should you be able to annotate, what validation rules exist, but also regular expressions that you try to extract, that the software, once you upload a document, it will run OCR, and then it will say, okay, in the OCR results, do any of these regular expressions apply? And if they do, show the bounding boxes for a given class, given a regular expression. So yeah, I can show really quick what it would look like on an actual document that I've removed some information from. And once this is just what it looks like when they load the document. This is with them not doing anything. This is extracted by a regular expression, and this is extracted from a regular expression at the moment. So they're just presented with a document that contains, basically annotations already. And if the annotations look good to them, they just click send to payment, and they don't have to do anything. And what we found actually, because as I said, it was a very limited scope POC, we actually found that 100% of the time the regular expressions worked. That was a shame. So a little bit about user involvement. I think one of the reasons why this worked, this project, was the user involvement. After we got it in the cloud and basically served it to our users, they started asking for features. So they wanted more colorful and visible annotations. They wanted these pre-annotations. They wanted validation rules, more validation rules, faster document loading. We supported that. Deleting documents that needed to be handled manually. We supported that. Reviewing and perhaps restoring deleted documents. Maybe in the future. Automatic approvals and reviewing these. We didn't implement automatic approvals, even though I believe that with these pre-annotation regular expressions, we could just automate this whole process as it is right now, because the users have not changed any annotations in months. They basically go in and just approve, and then their day is done. Another positive thing is that it used to be a pretty highly educated person who did this, like when they did it manually themselves, but now it's just a student worker. So the student worker opens the interface and like, okay, done. Which is nice, I guess. Now the other people, they have time for something more important. The results, 6 to 8 minutes without the tool, 35 seconds without the pre-annotations on average from a very small sample, it's an okay sample. And with automatic pre-annotations, it was about 5 seconds per document. We could potentially make it fully automatic, but that would require, in my opinion, some sampling. Like we would have to pick out some samples for them to review, just to make sure that we know for sure that we're not like drifting in performance. Maybe an emergency break. I don't know, if something else breaks somewhere, maybe they want to say like, stop the tool, stop this, I don't know. And a way to review automatically approved annotations. If we ever made it to the point that we would have models running, we would want a way to review these annotations. And this is the most beautiful plot I've ever made. My product owner came up to me like 5 minutes before a meeting, like, can you make some data? I was like, And I extracted some log data and basically subtracted from when a document is done loading until the time where this user clicks send. How long does it take? And this is from without the automatic annotations. So this is when they had to do everything in the tool. They had to do it manually. And the median time was around 35 seconds. So yeah, basically what I noted here. Reflections and ambitions. Was it a success? I think users, they loved it. They started also, if they had done like an NPS study or a score, it would be above 8, I'm sure of it, because they actually recommended it to other colleagues. Too bad we didn't deliver it, because RPA and the legacy code was a limiting factor. Like if all of our systems had APIs, I would hook this up to everything, and yeah, we'd be all over the place. But basically, apparently, it can also take a long time to develop these UI automations in legacy systems. And with a company that is constantly changing, maybe not as conservative as I said in the beginning, but suddenly decides to double in growth or double in size and change some of their core systems and whatnot, there was not enough time to do the automation before and after the annotation, which caused it to sort of stall. Like all the use cases that I said, yeah, we can do that, we couldn't because it took a long time to automate. But from my point of view, I would just have to create a new use case configuration, do some, create some new users and so on, and then it would be running for them as well. Like it would take a day to onboard a new use case and new users on this platform. Was it overly complicated? What happened to keeping it simple? The first prototype and MVP, they were pretty simple in my opinion. Like it really like nothing too big after the first week. Most people I think would be able to sit down with those scripts and just say, okay, that's how it works. Yeah, but it grew big in size, especially the JavaScript aspect became kind of a mess. Also, I'm not a front-end developer, so that it became a little bit complicated, but I think you could save it with some good software architecture. And then the second question that I've received a few times, like, why didn't you just use Azure Form Recognizer? Like, just use 5 samples and it works. Multiple reasons. I was told that there would be a lot of variance in data, and I didn't want to annotate it, as I already said. And then secondly, like, where's the feedback loop in this Azure Form Recognizer? Is there any sort of governance with regards to how are these models trained? Who trained them? What are their metrics? How do they work? How do we validate the data? We would have to build an interface for that anyway, somehow, like for getting human in the loop. So that's why we didn't just use Azure Form Recognizer. And that's also, I think there are tools out there that could support the whole flow that I talked about. But yeah, I'm not sure if they would succeed without the level of customization that we have been doing. Because the users really felt this was tailored to them. And there was an enormous buy-in from these users. They were really happy that they felt like we built it for them, and we really could cater any need they have. Like, oh, I want to, whenever I load the document, it has to be zoomed in. Okay, I'll just make a little setting here, and you can change the zoom ratio whenever you open a document. Cons, the level of maintenance. I built this pretty much by myself. As the code base is now, I would not give it to anybody else. It's not pretty. Yeah, let's just keep it at that. Yeah, and then I wondered, like, will this be important in the future, like with regulations coming, like the EU AI Act? I do believe that we will see, at least in this industry, we will see more human-in-the-loop systems in general. And I believe that once you have a human in the loop, you might as well annotate some data. And what I'm referring to is the fact that if you have use cases that deal with, for machine learning, that deal with sensitive data or like sensitive decisions, I believe the EU AI Act, they say that you need to have humans in the loop to approve have the final say in automating some process based on that is like sensitive or affects people in a pretty important way. So that could be important in our industry, at least in insurance and banking, probably. Yeah, the ambitions that we had, we wanted to open source it. As I said, like if anybody's interested, we can probably find a way to share the source code. I have been given the green light to share it, but yeah, I just don't have enough puke buckets to go around for when people actually see the source code. So, so you really need to man up before you get it. I really want to make the code cleaner before open sourcing it. We wanted to support all types of data. Right now, it's only documents. We were considering, like, when we made it far enough and had trust and had different use cases, like try and train some large models from Hugging Face. There are a lot of really cool models right now that show up that extract information from documents. Microsoft has a lot of these models. Google are doing some. There are some other players that really do some cool stuff. Active learning, like smart sampling of these, what documents should we annotate first? What will have the biggest impact on training these models? That would be fun to implement. And then we talked about, like, if it was open source, like, let's talk about the ideal world. If it was open source, had clean code, people wanted to use it. It would be pretty cool to find other companies with similar use cases and then, like, train shared models somehow. I think there are ways to do that, but it was a fun thought. If I had to do it today, I would read this book before I started. I found it later on, Human in the Loop Machine Learning. It's written by this guy, Robert Monarch, who wrote his PhD on human-in-the-loop machine learning. And he talks about active learning. How do you sample your data efficiently when you want to annotate data? And he talks about building good user interfaces, a bunch of good stuff. I recommend it, at least. Yeah, and then the table that I showed with all these like different proprietary software tools was the landscape at the time. But today I know about Label Studio. It existed back then as well. But I think they have grown immensely. Like they've really matured over the last year, probably after they started working together with Hugging Face. And it actually looks really cool. It supports active learning, and it supports making your own interface, and it supports like training models through annotations and some sort of like MLOps, and it supports validating data and pre-annotations, and it looks extremely promising. So I would probably look into this, see if I could use Label Studio, see if I could make a custom front end with that. But I might also just have built it from scratch anyway. It was pretty fun. Yeah, that's actually the talk. We're also hiring a little bit. So if you're looking for a job and you do want to work in the ML in insurance, you can talk to me or Emil. Raise up your hand, Emil. Yeah. Or invite me out for a beer, and yeah, we could just have a casual talk. And if you know someone that's also that would be cool, just refer them to one of us. We work with Azure a lot, Databricks, a lot of Docker, Python, of course. We use GitHub. What else? We train a bunch of models, do some data analysis. Sometimes we build a tool like this. We do a bunch of stuff. It's good. That's it. That's all I have. So yeah, open for questions if we have time. Yeah.
So I didn't maybe catch that. What happened to the project? It sounded super promising, I guess, and time saving and everything. So it's so operational.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're talking about something that broke my heart a lot. So if I start crying, no. No, what happened is it was super promising, and users really loved it, and it's still running in production today, but only for this small department, right? So what happened is we were planning to start rolling it out for the next department back in March last year. Yeah, March last year. And I was like, cool, man, let's get this ball rolling. Like, I'm ready. And then once we were about to start, the TIA, like the insurance application, the legacy system that runs everything, they had to do some updates on that, and it had to change like all of the automation RPA robots running. So they had to change all of those, and that took a long time. And then there was like a different focus, that took a long time. And then they bought another company. So now it was no longer about creating new value or realizing, it was about migrating these two companies. And in the end, like all of these things just kept taking time away from doing this. We also got a new product owner, so obviously priorities, they shifted a bit. I'm really sad actually that it didn't go further, because I think it had a lot of potential. So I don't know if that answers the question. Yeah.
Super cool workaround for the problem that invoices are not structured data. And that's not possible to try.
To what?
Because, I mean, basically what you're compensating for is that what should be at the origin structured data get transferred into a PDF.
Yeah, exactly.
That then you have to translate into structured data, right?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But our aspirations were also a little bit bigger. Like we started in invoices, but we were also thinking like this could be used elsewhere. Like we also receive, again, not structured data, but from I think housing reports. A lot of people like reading housing reports, and they have to, if you could help them like extract information, see patterns quickly, I think there could be a value there. Another one is when we receive offers from different companies, also not structured data. Yeah, so you're right, like it's a lot of situations where you could structure this information, but we receive it as PDFs. Yeah.
Super cool approach.
Yeah.
Two questions, sir.
Yeah.
Did you have any handwritten text in your invoices that the open source algorithm are able to detect it?
If we have any what?
Handwritten text?
No, this, so I was just using Tesseract. I don't think that works very well on handwritten text. I think one of the other use cases we talked about was like dental invoices or something. They say a bunch of times they write handwritten text and you need to be able to extract this as well. So I would have to look into another model. I think there are a lot of models also for dealing with handwritten text, but I'm not sure how well they work. This would have to show. And I think that's a situation where having actual humans change, like being able to change the annotations would show, like, be really valuable, yeah. Because this use case was overly simple, right? Like, basically, the sample document that I showed, all of them looked like that. And I was like, what happens to the variants in documents that I was promised? And my program was like, yeah, but we started simple, right? So, yeah. Another one, yeah?
Yeah, so you didn't consider AWS services in your landscape? Extract and augmented AI for AWS solutions?
So we were running on Azure, so we had the form recognizer, right? I didn't try it out, no. See if we can find it. There you go. We just hosted it as an Azure web app, and we didn't try out the form recognizer. I didn't. But if you read the documentation for the form recognizer, it actually doesn't say that it supports Danish, but I do think, I've heard that it works, actually, and I heard that it works pretty well. But again, that's for forms. That's when you have like these semi-structured documents, from what I heard. And I think once you go beyond that, like if you go into, as I mentioned, these like housing reports and stuff, suddenly annotating with this tool becomes more cumbersome, and you need more labels, and you lose this like human in the loop thing. So a lot of these proprietary softwares, they're made for annotating a batch of documents, training a model, and then hoping that it works. That's my interpretation, at least. So that's why I just said, we can build this in a week. Let's just see if it takes 80% of the workload. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, but we're not training any ML models here, right? We're just
No.
targeting and then saving ML. The only model that is happening is the OCR technology that it is extracting.
Exactly, yeah. There's no machine learning other than OCR in this at the moment, yeah. So
maybe you could try some of the AWS services like A2I, which will help you annotate.
Yeah.
And then you can use to extract the text. Even it also supports handwritten and also Latin text.
but now so for this, currently we only have this type of document. So we have all the annotations. We have it in like JSON format. So I think if we use a service like that, we would just be able to upload our annotations basically. So we don't need the annotation engine, right?
But you want the user to do the annotation every time they load the file, right?
Yeah.
Then you need that like annotation interface.
Yeah.
Which you can use ground truth from AWS.
Yeah, I haven't tried AWS service actually. I didn't know about that. I think I only looked at Azure because that's what we use. So,
Okay.
but I also think like you could probably hack some of these systems to serve this purpose. I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't you interested in actually, running a batch of invoices through the Azure Form Recognizer, and then compare the results if they were equal?
Yeah.
Then you know that it was all right, it was 100%.
Yeah.
And you can just spit out those that actually had a difference.
Yeah. Difference from.
Yeah, if they differed from your solution and Azure Form Recognizer, then one of them might be wrong.
You mean like the predictions from the model in Azure Form Recognizer? Or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think Azure Form Recognizer, I would like to try it once the use case became more sophisticated. Because since these regular expressions, they seek to solve our problems at this stage, I decided not to put any more effort into the model until we had an actual use case where we could try it out. So then I think in that case, I would probably benchmark different models against each other. And I think Azure Form Recognizer would be a good.
Yeah, but right now you have the student helper that says confirm, confirm, confirm.
Yeah.
And now you can confirm using another tool and say if the results are equal, then it's automatically confirmed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I could also just automatically confirm what we already have. I don't need to validate it, I guess. But yeah, I guess like the more, you could say like the more extraction models you run, if they all agree on something, that would be like a pretty good guess for your final. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, didn't consider like using more more models to validate. That's a good point. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
You mentioned audio use cases.
Yeah.
If you have a possible ones, what would that be?
Not sure. I'm not sure. I was just thinking like it should support any use case. Yeah. But it's yeah. Yeah.
Well, back in my day, full disclaimer, I used to work here. There was a lot of talk about using because you record calls in the call center, and then you'd be able to sort of annotate NPS scores, for example, based on the calls. So then you could do something like automatically score a call and guess what the NPS score of that call would be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But the problem is usually that the call quality is so bad that you have to fight that first, and then you have to fight Danish, and then you can actually do something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do run some annotation or transcription services as well. It's tricky in Danish, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I was wondering, like you said that the complexity in the documents never came, and I guess that was because the scope was never like expanded beyond.
Yeah.
Do you know like how much complexity there might be in those documents, in the sense that these structured ones that you got, is that like 2% or is that like 50%? How much variance?
The structure that I had here is a unique case. So these are medical invoices from doctors, and as far as I understand it, they actually, each doctor, they have their own invoice layout, and then we have an external partner. So the doctors, they send their invoice to our partner, and then the partner normalizes all of the invoices and sends to us. So in this use case, it's only this layout. But this use case, invoices from doctors, is a very small part of the total amount of invoices we receive. So I heard that from dentists and from veterinarians, it can change a lot. Some people, they write their entire invoice handwritten. Like, I think there's no structure in that. and others, they have like some sort of software that they use for handling all of their invoices or whatever. So they probably have different invoice softwares that they use. I'm not sure how much variation there is. I would love to. At first I said, let's find out how many documents there are. And then I thought to myself, like, no, I actually don't want to do an analysis. I just want to build something that works. And then I went to this. Yeah. Is that the valid answer?
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I mean, it's I'm from Schmidt, and I mean, we also have, I think, like most companies, we get a lot of invoices.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variance, and I mean, we have a lot of suppliers globally who we buy stuff from, right?
Yeah.
And in our case, we also use like some of these RPA tools. I don't remember what is used, but we actually automatically process a pretty small amount. So we have certain suppliers or like large suppliers, and they have very structured documents.
Yeah.
And in those cases, we can use,
You can just process it
automatically. But besides that, we have like just a shared service center where they're manually processed for the most part. But what I'm hoping is that since so many companies actually have this use case, that it will be like Azure or something to actually offer a solution that just works.
Yeah, I don't know how well it works in Danish Azure solution, but they do have like some models that are supposed to work reliably, and I don't know, I didn't try it. The big players that I found for like pre-made models, they were here, Pydata, that one, and then Azure Form Recognizer. They're like the ones that, from what I saw, that have like pre-built models that probably generalize really well on invoices. I'm not saying, again, subjective, limited research. There are probably a lot more out there, but these, for sure, these two. So we actually had a talk with these Pydata guys, and they were like, okay, so how many documents do you get? And we're like, well, quite a lot, 200,000. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, one of our clients, they have 10 million. Oh, okay, yeah, 200,000 a year doesn't really compare to 10 million. Like, But that's in Germany, so that's a different. They have a lot of documents, I heard. But the point is that this company actually it seemed pretty promising, I think. Sorry, no offense to the Germans in the room. Too late. One small wrong step and you're doomed. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Like there should be some good models, and that's actually why we talked about like it would like a crazy aspiration would be to build like a shared open model together. Like if this was open source, others would annotate the same kind of data, build a model together, and have a shared Danish invoice model that anybody can use. Why should we keep it to ourselves? Sooner or later, it's going to come. So, yeah.
What if the data you're looking for is not in a rectangle? Like for instance, you might have the title and then the answer like right after it, like a line, and then a few lines later.
Then we build it. Yeah. We didn't have this issue yet, but yeah, then we would try to build a solution for it, right? I think that's the best I can say. You probably have some sort of like class that would join these informations together, right? I think. Yeah, exactly. It would be a bit cumbersome, but I think there should be I think some of like this label box and Label Studio, they can handle this sort of information. So, yeah. I didn't know about like how I think Label Box and Label Studio were not. Label Box probably, but Label Studio was not that advanced when I started looking into this, but now it is. I think it's quite mature, and I think they would solve this use case that you're mentioning. Yeah. So that's also why I did have to do it again. Then I would probably look into Label Studio and see like, can I save some time? Yeah. Still open. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious about whether you looked into what the evidence synthesis community are doing with this kind of stuff. It's really reminiscent of the kinds of problems which we did not solve at the evidence synthesis hackathon, that we've got multiple different scientific papers across time and countries, and we're trying to pull out these summary statistics like things and standard deviations so we can feed them into our meta-analyses. So it's very similar in the sense that you've got them, the papers are laid out in completely different ways. It's a complex document. We need to pull out these common summary statistics across all the studies so we can compare apples and apples. But it's exactly the same kind of problems, but in a very different format. It's really interesting. But they were not coming at it from machine learning.
No.
And in our like 3-day hackathons, we'd sort of talk a lot about how this is this extraction and systematic review, data extraction is this huge time sink. So
exactly.
Yeah, really. But I haven't been to the conference for a couple of years, so I'm curious whether you've heard any latest from that crew.
I don't know. Actually, it's the first I hear of this, but I just want to say that we were lucky that we have such horrible legacy systems. Because otherwise, I don't think the users would want to do this. Basically, this is like pick your poison. You want a legacy system, or you want to annotate data, and then we can use this data, right?
It just became this constant unsolved problem for us. It's just too hard. Even though what we want to pull out for a meta-analysis is so simple, usually just mean standard deviation sample size for the two arms. But
I think the other aspect in this is that these like large language models, ChatGPT, I kind of throw up a little every time I say it, but they're extremely powerful, right? So maybe using some of those like really powerful transformer models would help you extract this data. I don't know. I really think that this project started like 1.5 years ago. The game is completely changed. Like,
we don't want ChatGPT making it up the summaries.
That's true. That would be an issue. Yeah, maybe some sort of validation. I don't know what you can do.
It's interesting to hear about it in such a different context.
I think we'll make this the last question, and then we can continue the conversation outside.
Oh no, I just wanted to mention that actually new Bing, which uses fork of ChatGPT, has this option that you can read and summarize the PDF. It's enough that this PDF is online, and it can read it. Obviously, it does some mistakes, but if it's better than So you need Microsoft Edge and new Bing, and the PDF must be online. And it doesn't matter if it's 200 pages, 300 pages, it can read it very fast. So you have to check it out, really. But you need Edge. So.
On that note, let's give our speaker a big hand. So if you have any more burning questions, I'm sure Andreas is, well, he'd better be sticking around to the end because he's locking it out. We get kicked out at 10ish. There's plenty of drinks and pizza left outside. So see you outside.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.